Well, greetings, friends. Welcome to another one of our free Friday community classes right here on the YouTubes. We just finished up a month long plant spirit journey with the incredible and too often overlooked dandelion. So, I wanted to just pluck a few little bits from that experience from the monograph of magic and medicine that I wrote for the journey and from some of my personal experiences with this incredible weedy ally and share them with you this week. So here we go, talking about the magic and medicine of dandelion. So first, a couple of selections from the journey monograph. I write a pretty big monograph for every journey we do each month. They start the day after the new moon, and we spend about 28, 29 days sitting with one plant. We do a full moon ritual. I do guided audio meditations. There's a bunch of community stuff around it. So, this is just kind of a little selection of stuff from there. So, we're going to talk about nomenclature and etymology, botany, medicine, magic, and the spirit of dandelion. So, let's get started. So, nomenclature, dandelion actually comes from the Old French Dandelion, which translates to lion's tooth. And you can see the little bundle of dandelion leaves there, and the serrations kind of look like lion's teeth, which I think is very cool. And that will come back up at the end when we talk about the spirit of this plant and how I like to work with dandelion and how we just work with dandelion during our sit. The genus name Taraxacum, there's actually two different theories on where this kind of funky genus name comes from. The first is from the Arabic Tarakshakun, which basically implies an herb that's bitter. So that makes total sense, as we'll explore here in a minute. The second, and this one I favor, not only because it makes more sense, but also because it's likely that dandelion is indigenous to the area around Greece. Would be that the Old Greek taraxos meaning disorder and akos meaning remedy. So taraxos akos, right? Kind of makes sense, especially since a lot of these really bitter tonic herbs are considered, you know, heal alls, panaceas where they're from. Like pretty much every tradition has these bitter tonic herbs, and they're the ones that are revered the most. We have this conversation a lot, but I will say it over and over again because it bears repeating that herbs like dandelion, it's very easy for people to overlook them and say, oh, that's like a basic herb. That's like a beginner's herb. That's a weed herb. There's nothing like exotic. It's not being traipsed out of the rainforest. Please don't be that person. The reason why some of these plants, the dandelion and chamomile and lavender and mint, are basic is because they show up, right? It's not that they're basic herbs. It's not that they're beginner's herbs. It's that they're foundational herbs that we can't really uh, understand plants without these plants that continuously show up and support us in our work. So the famous herbs are famous for a reason and they deserve our reverence. Um, Finally, I wanted to mention just a generality within binomial nomenclature in botany that when you see a species name like officinalis, or in this case, officinale with the dandelion scientific name Taraxacum officinale, that officinalis or officinale species name just implies that the particular plant you're talking about has a really established place in Western pharmacopoeia tradition, that it's an herb that has been worked with for a very long time. And when modern pharmacology started to emerge in both the States and in Europe, these plants that had a really, established ancestral, empirical, and anecdotal tradition of being worked with as medicine got this officinale or officinalis species name to help set them aside from other plants. So when you see that, you're working with a plant that has a lot of depth with the human experience, and that's always a good thing, right? Little botany, just a little botany. Uh, Dandelion is part of the great big gigantic Asteraceae family, which we used to call the Compositae family, but now it's Asteraceae, aka the aster family. There are 32,000 individual species of plants in this family. It's a big, big family. Some that you probably have heard of before include calendula, echinacea, which is the plant we're sitting with now, chamomile, artemisia, wormwood, burdock, arnica, yarrow, sagebrush, goldenrod, and a bunch of other ones. They're all related. They're all connected through their scientific classification of being in the Asteraceae family. I always meditate on, do the plants feel this connection, or is the connection, this botanical sort of signature based connection solely a human uh, fabrication? I don't know, but it seems to work. There's this really funny thing within botany where people will refer to plants as DYC, meaning damn yellow compositae, because if you are familiar with pretty much all the plants that I just mentioned, maybe with the exception of echinacea and sometimes yarrow, you know that they all have yellow composite flowers, right? So this family can be the hardest family of plants to learn to confidently identify because so many of them look alike. And if you're learning identification from a book and it's just like description, I mean, somebody could be describing, so many different plants in the Asteraceae family when they talk about these yellow composite flowers. So we'd say the DYC, another damn yellow composite, another yellow flower. Nature seems to love these yellow flowers. So do we. And another, cool thing from just again a selection from the botany of this plant is the seed clocks, right? Those little seed puffs that everybody knows that you can blow on them and the seeds will scatter. This is really unique to dandelion as a way to propagate themselves, right? That the flower itself gets pollinated, and then the flower evolves into this seed ball, and then the seeds get picked up by the wind or by animals passing by, and they get spread all around that way, to the chagrin of gardeners who don't like pretty yellow flowers in their yard, which I will never understand. So the seed clocks are really special and really unique to dandelion. We don't see them in other Asteraceae plants, or really in many other plants at all. So let's talk a little bit about medicine. The energetics of the root differ slightly from those of the leaves, and those are the two parts we work with most. Now, the flowers and the seed ball can both be worked with medicinally. I would point you in the direction of the work of Lucy Jones for more on that. But the root has a bittersweet coolness, while the leaf has bitter coldness. So the leaf is much more cold. The root has some sweetness, some kind of nurturing, building, sweet energy, and is a little bit less cold on the energetic spectrum. Both of the plant parts, root and leaf, are expressly diuretic, meaning that they will increase the output of urine. An alterative, which generally gets defined as an herb that cleanses the blood, but it's more accurate to say that alterative herbs alter the state of blood and other vital essences and functions in the body. So it kind of is a restorative herb, or we might say a tonic herb. The root has some pretty specific effects, one being cholagogue, meaning that it affects or gets to work on the liver and liver function specifically. We'll talk about that here in a second, and as a tonic. And then it's also smart to be mindful that whenever we're working with diuretic herbs, we will be increasing the output of urine, which increases the amount of work the kidneys and the bladder need to do. So you do have to keep that in mind if you've got issues there. And that if you will be urinating a lot more, you also need to be hydrating a lot more. The nice thing about working with dandelion as an effective diuretic is many of the over-the-counter pharmaceutical diuretics have to be supplemented with potassium and minerals and a bunch of other stuff, because as they're flushing the kidneys and increasing that output of urine, they're also sort of causing deficiency in the body's mineral complex. That will not happen with dandelion. In fact, dandelion tends to soothe the urinary tissues as it's increasing the output of urination, which is fantastic, and replaces a lot of the lost uh, elements, including potassium. So people tend to not run any deficiencies when they're working with dandelion responsibly as a diuretic. So that diuretic effect, very pronounced. We will use this to clear heat or infection out of the urinary tract for toning and strengthening the urinary system. I really think about dandelion root for liver heat. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that whenever there's any issue with the liver, whether it's heat or congestion, um, I'm going to have dandelion root in that formula. I might not work with only dandelion root, but dandelion root's probably going to be a big part of that formula. This herb, being cooling and bitter and cholagogic, has a direct effect on the liver, not only the physical tissues of the liver, but also the mental, emotional tissues of the liver, which tends to be where we store our hot emotions, anger, resentment, jealousy, those things that kind of make our face flush when we feel those emotions. So dandelion root, an incredible ally for navigating those spaces. I really love dandelion root, usually paired with nettles for clearing out gout. The bitter tonic effect is going to bring an alternative effect, really is going to help clear the blood and break down those uric crystals and really just nourish the system and help figure out why that buildup is happening down in the joints, rather than being processed efficiently, up in the visceral organs. So dandelion and nettles together, really fantastic for that. Blood cleansing. You can work with dandelion root pretty much all year long, in moderation because of that pronounced diuretic effect. But this is a great herb, especially at the beginning of spring and then maybe right before we go into winter, to just do a couple weeks of dandelion root tea to just give yourself a little cleanse, a little spring cleanse and then a little end of the bright half of the year cleanse before winter. This is a really effective way to just get in and kind of wipe the slate, get rid of any stagnation or excess heat or inflammation out of those, mostly the digestive organs, really. Very few herbs, especially from the Western materia medica. There are definitely, I think, more that have been defined within traditional Chinese medicine, but dandelion to me is a champion gallbladder tonic, and we just don't see very many herbs that uh, can get into the gallbladder that really address gallbladder function, making sure the gallbladder moves and pumps efficiently, that it doesn't become blocked up or stagnant, that we don't see, things starting to build up and crystallize in the gallbladder. Very important. So for folks who have a sluggish or congested gallbladder, I think about dandelion root and dandelion leaf maybe together. And if there's really congestion, I would want to add a small percentage of a nice aromatic decongestant herb in there, just an aromatic, warm, fragrant herb. You can kind of pick whichever one. It's only going to be about 5 or 10% of the formula, just in there to kind of help with some breakthrough energy. Dandelion root especially, but the leaves too, are definitely a bitter tonic. They are going to act as a digestive bitter to the digestive system, increasing the output of digestive enzymes, getting the stomach moving, getting the peristalsis of the bowels going, getting all of the spleen and gallbladder and pancreas online. These bitter tonic herbs are fantastic when there's a timing fault in the digestion, right? Things aren't firing when they should fire. So we eat food and the food ends up just kind of sitting in our stomach, and we get food baby, and it's like stagnated and it's not moving. Digestive bitters, right? So we work with these to get the digestive system moving, That tonic action in the digestive system has also a condensing downward energetic pull in the body. So, this is why you will see people also consider bitter tonic herbs for activating the sympathetic nervous system and even helping with things like migraines, right? Very helpful. Rheumatism and all rheumatic conditions, the bitterness is going to drain hot buildup, hot congestion from the joints. So, I might not work just with dandelion root, but when I see rheumatic conditions, especially when there's heat and maybe some indication of phlegm buildup in the joints, absolutely thinking dandelion. And last but not least is outlook. This is a really beautiful plant to work with for folks who are having a hard time finding the light, right? Their outlook is really negative. They're not seeing what's coming next. Dandelion will help us turn towards the sun. It will help us manifest that seed ball energy where we're kind of reaching out and laying the groundwork for the next few steps in our life, and really just a very uplifting plant. To reference the work of Lucy Jones again, she talks about this beautiful alternating medicine between flower head and seed head of dandelion for folks who are navigating bipolar disorder. So, we tend to overlook the efficacy of bitter tonics for mood way too much. I'm one of the people that will talk endlessly about the way that bitter tonics dovetail in with the parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous response, fight or flight, rest and digest. And you will often see me turning to bitter tonic herbs to work with people stuck in parasympathetic zone more than I work even with nervines and sedatives for that same effect, because while they can be nice in the moment, I would rather have a deeply tonifying effect to start re-regulating that process. A little bit of magic. One of my favorite stories about dandelion is the chthonic goddess Hecate using dandelion root exclusively to feed Theseus to prepare him for battle. And I think about dandelion, as does Paul Byral, one of my teachers, the late Paul Byral. Uh, as being related to these really chthonic underworld deities, because this is a root that will grow through anything. Like, it will move through concrete, through rocks, through clay, through anything to get down into the soil, to move down into those earthy depths. So, as a plant related to Hecate and other deities like her, dark underworld chthonic deities, I think this is a fantastic plant. And there's the invitation to meditate on, that upper aerial portion, the bright sunny flowers reaching upward, and then the dark chthonic energy below. There's a seed clock air magic, of course, right? We all did this as kids. You pick the seed clocks and you blow them and they scatter in every direction. But now we know that if we can get a little more intentional, if we can be mindful, if we can petition the plant to carry our intent, our prayers and petitions out to the directions, this can be a really beautiful and simple act of magic with dandelion. Maud Grieve talks about how observing dandelions in full bloom, they would attract no less than 93 different insects who were coming to drink their abundant nectar. And that makes me think of the Pusanga traditions, the Amazonian Pusanga traditions of plants that attract a lot of insects are attractive plants, right? So we can work with dandelion flowers in a perfume or an anointing oil or a sachet to bring attention, people, movement, action, activity to ourselves, to businesses, to whatever. In the same way that that plant attracts all of the insects, there's the signature that they will attract visitors that we seek. Uh, there's a folkloric name for this plant, pissabed, which is partly due to the diuretic effect, of course. But this has some really interesting old folklore that when it was said that when children would pick dandelion, especially the blooming flowers, it would offend the plant spirit because those flowers are when we look at a dandelion flower head, it's actually a composite of many hundreds of individual little flowers. Each one of those little yellow, what looks like a little yellow petal, is actually its own individual flower. And so they're feeding a lot of insects. They're very, nectar rich. And it also takes a lot of pollination in order to get that whole plant pollinated. So when kids would go around and pluck all of them, it would offend the dandelion spirit who was just trying to do what they were doing. And they would curse the child with bedwetting, right? So consider that. There are lots of stories of different plants punishing humans who don't respect them, who don't harvest them at the right time, or who don't harvest them with the appropriate offerings or prayers. And as much as dandelion is such a loving, giving, generous plant, there is folklore that exists that says if you take advantage of this plant, bad things will happen to you. Um, One of the really beautiful old Irish names for dandelion, Bearn and Breed, means little notched plant of the goddess Bridget, of course. And so dandelion is related to the goddess Bridget or Breed, especially since during, Breed being a springtime goddess and dandelion being a springtime plant, right? So they're related. So folks who work with that goddess, dandelion is a fantastic plant ally to enter into that. I talk about the triune of green sorcery, right? Deity, plant, sorcerer. And when you get those three together and everyone's aligned, then you can see some real magic happening. Last but not least, from my dear friend Albert Bjorn's book, Icelandic Plant Magic, he talks about dandelion roots being carried for courage and strength in Icelandic plant lore, or tucked into a charm bag or a spell bag, or carried in the pocket, or turned into a necklace to give one courage and strength, lion-like courage, I would think, right? Dandelion. So last but not least, let's talk about just a few little points of dandelion, the spirit of dandelion. So in this particular sit that we just finished up, there are lots of different ways we could approach working with this plant, and I let the plants lead. We could have done a cleansing, we could have done, deep blood work, we could have done chthonic work. There's all kinds of possibilities, but dandelion really stood up for this sit and said, we should talk about letting go. And I think about diuresis, that increasing the output of urine function of these diuretic herbs, and that the liquid parts of our body, the urine, the water, the tears, are all related to emotions. And so dandelion really talks about the ability to work with that process of diuresis, to release, to let go, to pee out and flush down those patterns and those things that continue to inform our lives that we would rather not be informed by, right? I think we've all been through situations where we don't want to lose the lessons, we don't want to lose the realizations, and we don't want to lose the memories, even of some of the worst, more bad things that have happened to us. But we would like for those things not to continue to inform our belief patterns, or how what our mental atmosphere is, what we believe is possible. We don't want to be limited by those things. And dandelion comes in with those Dandelion, those lion tooth leaves, and gnaws through those cords, gnaws through those tethers that bind us to people, places, memories, timelines, events that just don't serve us. They just act like dead weight. Again, when we do this cord cutting work, it's not about forgetting. It's not, eternal sunshine of the spotless mind stuff. It's about seeing something as being in the past, in the moment, in the time when it happened, and allowing it to live there without having it inform and influence every single thing we do now. Because some of these bad things that we go through, these tough situations that we go through, if we allow them to inform our every decision and our self-identity, they're not going to let us get very far. So dandelion will come in with that bitter tonic energy and sort of shine a light, sort of say, look, here's where these cords are. Here's where this stuff is that you are connected to, that's you're still feeding, that's still draining energy from you, and that still influences, the kind of magic and medicine that you hold in the present, and in the future. So dandelion shows us the chords and then helps us to gnaw through them, to chew through them, to release them, to purge and cleanse and just let it go. And something that a lot of people who did this sit experienced is that let go came with a really interesting sense of ease, that people had tried to do letting go work before around something and it was really hard to let go, and dandelion just sort of makes it easy. And we experienced a lot of what in our community chat we were calling replacement medicine, right? That the minute we were able to kind of let go of a pattern, or something that just was a heavy weight for us, or just wasn't serving us, or something we didn't want to carry into the year ahead, something better and upgraded and more aligned almost immediately found its way in. We all kept experiencing that over and over again. So when I see that, I add that kind of stuff to my materia medica, especially when several people have those same experiences at the same time. So while there's so much we could say about the spirit of dandelion, their forgiveness, their resilience, their ability to be trampled on and poisoned and scorned, and keep coming back over and over again because they're good medicine, I think that the aspect of this plant's personality that I'm really focused on right now is that cutting through energy, that cord cutting and releasing medicine. So hopefully that inspires you to work with this incredible plant in a way that is deeper, and brings a lot of love and respect to them. With that, I'm going to end with a little reminder over on our Patreon. This is where we do the plant spirit journeys every month. We start a new one the day after every new moon. It's supported with all kinds of material. I do different stuff every month, guided audio meditations and rituals and materia medica and monographs. And then there's a community chat around all of it. We do a monthly advanced class. There's constantly courses happening. Right now, we are about to start a new 11-week course on herbs and the respiratory system. I share case studies, we do a book club, and really it's just some of the most incredible people that you'll find out there talking about this deeper plant spirit work. So if this kind of stuff interests you, it is one monthly amount that gives you full access to all of the content I do. You can go through and just pick out the stuff that you find interesting. So with that, with inspiration from the mighty dandelion, I'll send you out with blessings of peace and plenty. Take care. I'll see you soon.